Well, it's my great pleasure to introduce Melissa Bruning to the show. Costume designer, you'll know her work from War for the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Parker, to name but a few. How are we doing today, Melissa?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Oh, Melissa, I'm very excited to be speaking to you today. I might have told you off air, but I've gone through something of a Jason Statham binge phase where I've been watching because it's Netflix and
Yeah, of course. And there's
tailor-made.
a lot of them.
Yes. He's very prolific.
Yeah.
So I watched Parker and then thought I'd look you up and then realized that you've actually done quite a lot of my favorite films. But maybe just introduce yourself for the uninitiated first and brag a bit, please, if you will.
All right. So I am a costume designer. I decided when I was 8, I wanted to be a costume designer. My dad was an artist. My mom was an artist. So nobody said no. Nobody expected me to be a lawyer or a doctor. Or they were like, "Great, that sounds cool." So I started designing sets and costumes in high school. And then I moved, I went to Nebraska Wesleyan University, which is a small university in Nebraska. And the advantage to that is that they let me design my own program. So I have a BFA in technical theater, which meant I also did lighting, directing, acting, took history classes, took art classes. I was able to kind of just do, whatever I wanted that I felt like I needed to, be a designer.
Yeah.
And then I interviewed at a couple different schools and was accepted to NYU Tisch School of Design for my master's in costume design, and managed to get a full ride, which is the only way I could afford to move to New York and go to school and all that. And it was great. It was like my adult life began. But I did want to be I had all intentions of being a Broadway designer. And till I got there and realized what a closed system it was. And it's very hard to, there's only a certain amount of theaters that do Broadway shows.
Right.
And a lot of those designers work until their 80s or longer. Wow. And so, it's, as a young designer, I could assist, but even as assisting on Broadway shows, I couldn't make enough money to afford the insurance.
Right.
I don't know if they've changed it since then, but so I hit the 90s with independent films and fell in love.
Oh, great. So was it disheartening for you at all that you couldn't get into Broadway, or was it, just lucky now you look back at it?
My friends had an intervention with me for a while where I had a foot in both worlds, right? So I was doing indies, but then I was also doing like off Broadway, and I was doing sets and costumes. And I felt like I wasn't getting ahead in either because my mind was so split on it. And a bunch of my friends had an intervention over probably a couple of pints to say I seem like a much happier person when I was working on film and television. And quite honestly, they treat you better.
Right.
You're not expected to work 7 days a week. You're not expected to work. They provide meals. There's union. Like, it's a whole different animal. And I was excited about, my options were to keep kind of hammering away at it. And I may have done it. Who knows? But my fear was that I would end up in like Cleveland doing West Side Story at the regional rep.
Right. Okay.
And not that to say that isn't a worthy thing. It wasn't going to be enough for me.
Right. Not fulfilling.
So I liked, the thing that I really loved about film was we were making up new worlds. So it wasn't reinventing Shakespeare. It was reinventing, this is this block in New York. This is where these people live. This is who this person is. And as a costume designer, you have to do it from the lead actors all the way down to the background extra who is the driver of the car or runs the bodega. Like you are creating the wallpaper for the story.
Mm.
And so that's really where I started feeling like, this is more, I need to leap to this side.
And you were doing independent films for a while, and then was there a film that you did that kind of broke you into the mainstream, that got you into people's eye?
It's fun. So I did, in the summer of 2000, I did Super Troopers and Kissing Jessica Stein back to back. And part of that was because also there was a union strike on and all commercials ceased to exist. And that used to be my bread and butter, is that I could style a commercial, make, pension, welfare, insurance, a chunk of change. And then I could do the independent films, which were like no money and like 15-hour days.
Right.
And it was that summer that I did those two films that I also met crews from Los Angeles. That there are a lot of the people were crossovers. They were New Yorkers who had moved to LA, and they were like, oh my God, you're working out of a U-Haul truck. In LA, they have like trucks and there's studios to rent clothes. I mean, Kissing Jessica Stein, we didn't have any space, and there was so many clothes in the movie that I actually rented a 24-hour storage space, like a 10 by 12, and we loaded racks into it, and that was my office.
All right. Okay.
I would even fit actors in the storage space. Like they're probably dying to hear that now, but it really was independent. And so that sort of, knowing those people, I was able to come out to LA. My aunt lives in Pasadena. So I was lucky. I just packed everything up, came out to LA to try it out. And then 9/11 happened and there was no theater.
Right.
And there was nothing. It was like I took this leap. And then when I turned around, there was nothing to go back to. And so it was only forward.
It's interesting. I think I say this to people all the time because I write and freelance and do a lot of writing, and people go, well, how do you make money blogging? And by the way, you don't, but you can make some peanuts, but it's better than nothing. And I just say, well, look, I think for about the first year, it was just a hobby, and I never asked to be paid. I was just very happy to write. It was just something that I could do quite easily. And I think people have the idea of just turning up and assuming that they're going to get paid for their time because they can't be wasting time. Where I feel like if you really want to do something in the area that you really like doing, you've got to be willing to turn up and do it for free and learn on the job, and then just take that, and then you'll be indispensable later down the road.
Mm-hmm. And that the film industry is actually, that is what it is. It's apprenticeship, right? So, you learn on the job. I mean, I do feel, it's funny because graduate school, undergrad, was a lot of money. A lot of money for somebody who then goes on to not make much money.
Right. Yeah.
And then living in New York City was so like, I mean, back in the 90s, there were still squatters. I was lucky in some ways because I lived very close to all the people who did rent. I lived a couple blocks from the New York Theater Workshop. I live a block off St. Mark Street. I live next to a famous bar called McSorley's Tavern that's been there since the 1800s. And, the places I used to go to brunch on Sundays it was the Life Cafe. Like it was all these things. And so it did, in retrospect, it does feel like a renaissance that was happening at that time. And I moved within that, which, is sort of a great badge to me that I was like, oh, who knew I was right place, right time. But it was all artists and none of us had any money. And now that I'm at a place where I do get some money, which is, thank God, I'm glad I could do it at that time. But I am very conscious of people who work for me saying, what's your plan? What is whether it's a babysitter or it's like my costume PAs, what's your plan? Like we need to be moving you forward.
Yeah.
And again, it's I do feel like, you know, when you love something, you don't necessarily protect yourself. You do it because you love it. And then hopefully you rely on people who, you know, look from higher up, look down and go like, well, what can we do to help you?
Yeah. Yeah, you need that bit of luck where people can also see themselves in you and go, well, I was in your position once. You know,
Exactly.
I'm gonna introduce you to such and such, or open a door.
Exactly.
So do you now have to audition for roles in films, or are now people calling you?
So I have an agent that I've had since, I guess, Let Me In is when Gil and I started working together. And so what happens as you sort of move up the studio ladder is that every project, you know, it all goes through the agents, right? So unless you're on an independent film and somebody's like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. Can you do this for me? So agents get a list of all the projects in town, and then they submit people to the list. And then on that list, the people who are putting the project together look at it and they're like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I like that person's work. Oh, okay. So generally, they will interview 3 to 4 costume designers per project, right?
Right.
So, you know, they do this, the like, who's in town, who's interested, who's, you know, and like, I know when I was put up for Space Jam, my agent was like, hey, are you interested? And I was like, yeah, of course I am. And he was like, okay, great. And then the line producer, they're like, oh, she's really interested. He's like, oh, great, perfect. But when you go in, I get a script. I put together a PDF document of visuals. I take each of the main characters and I just put together how I would do it and how I see it.
Right.
And you go through, you put those together, and then anything else that's specialized, you kind of like put some background, and you know, you create a presentation. And then I have little books of my own work that I sort of hand around the room saying, this is who I am, if you don't know me. And then you have to sell yourself,
right,
for the project, or at least you should. And, you know, say like, okay, this is why I'm interested. So for Space Jam, the first commercial I ever worked on was directed by Joe Pytka, who directed the first Space Jam.
right.
And so for me, it was a full circle moment, right? And so, you know, I felt passionate about it in that way. I felt strongly about the performers. I felt like I understand the studio system. I know what the studio needs. Like, I know how the procedure works. There also was a motion capture element to it, which I'm very familiar with. So I understand what that language is and what the needs are when doing something with that, and working with, like on this one, we worked with Industrial Light Magic. But I've also worked with Weta before, and what their needs are. And they know that I am a collaborator between the director, the producer, the actors, and visual effects. And what about that? I have to bridge that.
And do directors handpick you as well? Because I know you've worked with like Taylor Hackford a couple of times on Love Punch and Parker, and Matt Reeves has collaborated with you. So do they pick up the phone and go, Melissa, what are you up to? Can you get on board with this?
Yes, and that's what you hope for, right? So my goal is to work with people that I love collaborating with. It makes it worth doing. It's exciting. You're a fellow storyteller. It is the closest thing to doing theater to me, because when you're in theater, it's the director, it's the lighting designer, the set designer, the costume designer. We are the closest voices around the director, helping, saying, I can give you this, or I could do that, or this isn't, you know, something's not working right here. Well, this is my take on it. And so like when I auditioned for or interviewed for Taylor for Love Ranch. And it was, I mean, I came in, I had like 100-page book, and this is pre like really a lot of computer stuff. And so it was like taped and like, back in the day, this was a while ago.
2010, I think.
2010. So it was, I mean, anyway, I put together this huge book. I went through every possible character. I had been to New York. I went into microfiche. I got the original Rolling Stone articles and all this. I said, I can do this. I can do that. I can do that. And he goes, the end of it, he goes, listen, I'm impressed, but I've got Academy Award winning costume designers wanting to do this project with me.
Wow.
Why should I pick you?
And your
And
answer?
I said, because I'm the best.
Yeah, you did. And then
I said, and I'm young, I'm vibrant, I understand the sexiness appeal of this, and I feel like I could be a collaborator with you.
Nice answer. I've always dreamed of saying that in interviews with,
Right.
well, actually, I think I might have done once, said that I'm the best and whipped the scarf around my neck and said, good day. I never got a call back. That's normally how it goes for me in them situations.
But, people appreciate passion. I mean, when I met with Matt Reeves for Let Me In, we had such a symbiotic, like, thought for the whole piece. And I was like, I understand these characters. I went to school in Nebraska and I whipped out my like junior high yearbook from that year. And he was like, oh my God, we almost set this in Omaha, Nebraska.
Nice.
And we collaborate very well. And it's a nice relationship. Like even on War for the Planet of the Apes, when we were dealing with the military, he wanted it to look like Vietnam, but the reality is the uniforms didn't look like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what if I like just muck them all up? Like just make them look filthy. We dye it down, we gray it out. And he was like, yeah. He goes, this is what I want. This is the visual in my head. And I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to give it to you, but in a way that makes logical sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I always have to come from a center of being true to reality, especially in apocalyptic stuff.
Yeah.
You have to have that kernel of reality.
Did the apes wear any clothes? I think some apes wore some clothes, right?
Well, yes. So in Dawn for the Planet of the Apes, I had designed all these gorgeous stuff. At the time, we were behind in shooting, and Weta was sort of like, we think we can render fabric, but every time you did any individual piece, it was like $1 million, right?
Wow.
And then once you had that piece, you could replicate it as many times. But to make it work, they didn't quite know if they had the technology. And, as a director, Matt was like, well, I could shoot another 3 weeks, or I could have a wrap. I think I'll shoot another 3 weeks. Yeah. And it was the correct decision. I mean, they didn't really need anything because they're apes and they don't really need anything. And we did some like headdresses. The hardest thing we had was like, how do you tell Cornelia from Caesar? Because female apes and male apes don't really look much different.
Yeah.
So, we had to kind of play around with some of that kind of idea. But ultimately, and it wasn't until, so then on War, the technology had increased. And so the coat on Bad Ape, Steve Zahn's character, so there was an actual one, and then that he would wear over his mocap suit. But there was also one built in ape size, as if like I had a 4'3" Caesar built, like an armature. And so we would drape and do things on there to get the sizing. Right. So what I did is I made one of those, and we texture it, we paint it, we do everything. And then Weta goes and scans it into the computer. And then they break it apart, and then they sort of watch Like they put it together. But it's, you know, I don't, the technology, it's getting better and better and better, but it's hard to see, like, you don't want to do things that move like this blouse that's really fluid. Very hard.
Yeah.
You know
So
what I mean? But a puffer vest with some texture to it is something that translates easier.
the Planet of the Apes trilogy is so good. I just love that. I've got it. I've got it here. It arrived just a couple of days
Oh
ago. I haven't
yeah.
had the. I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times. I haven't just seen it in the last couple of years. But when I called you up and said, "Oh, you got to come on the show," I just thought, how is it possible to even do these kind of animations? And like, how do you even begin, like, planning what needs to be on the people around them? So like the, you know, the texture of whatever's going to be going on with the apes, how
Yeah.
does that reflect on the clothes, and how does it all come together in a picture where nothing stands out, where it looks like, oh, hold on a minute, that guy wasn't in the room when we talked about this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
i
Yeah.
mean i mean
I mean, the technology is amazing, right? So that Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was the first film that I'd worked on motion capture in that way. And I mean, it looked like alchemy. You know, here you have these guys walking around with sensors on, and then Terry Notary was doing the motion, you know, teaching them how to act like apes. He plays Rocket in the movies. And it just, like, you're looking at it, you're looking at the screen, you're watching them visually put it on top of the other one, and it's amazing.
yeah,
And you know, for me, most of my job is, what do you need? What do you need from me? And there's a woman in Canada, Norma, who makes all the motion capture suits, but we were doing something that most people did not, which was, we took it out of a studio setting where the cameras are just set up, and we put it in the wild, like in the forest. And so everything had to be calibrated in between. We had started out with a camera that also shot 3D, and that camera did not like cold and wet,
oh
which
wow.
was everything. So after, like, I think we spent, oh gosh, probably a week and a half on one scene, just trying to work the kinks out. We got rid of that camera. It's just, you know, and it was extremely difficult, but extremely rewarding.
Sounds like a lot of people were learning on the jobs, even getting their head around the text.
Yeah, the tech of it, the camera side of it was difficult.
Mm.
The physicality, we had late casting of actors, and so I think I got Carrie Russell, like, she, I knew it would be somebody, like, I had it narrowed down to like 3, right? So it's like, these were the sizes. But because when you do an apocalyptic film, right, where they're wearing the same thing most of the time, you don't have one, you have
Yeah.
30,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you have different degrees of distressing. And then it's them, it's their photo double, it's a stunt double, sometimes 2 stunt doubles. And so each of these layers of clothes have to be exact duplicates of each other, even though they're not necessarily the exact size. But then you also have a progression, right? So you have, okay, we start in the woods, and then this happens, and then there's like the crash in the plant, and then there's another layer of muck, and then there's another layer of muck, and then they get all washed off, and then what kind of muck is left on that?
Mm.
And so it's from a costume point of view, and then you're not shooting in order, so there's a lot of discussion, like, okay, so how much water is actually going to come at them? Like,
Yeah.
how, like, what level, because we're seeing them after we do that, but we haven't done that stunt yet.
Right, yeah.
So it's a lot of, and thank God I have a really great team, because we're all like, okay, this matches this, and then we create a pattern of levels. Like, even for The Rock in Rampage, Dwayne Johnson, we, like, what level of him getting hurt and distressed, like, what level is this t-shirt? And then we do tests, say, like, is this enough? No, add some more, you know. And then once you add it, you can't go backwards. So it's like, okay, I need 50 XXL rag and bone t-shirts in this style. Go. Everybody starts calling all over the world, trying to get in as many as you can so that you have your own little warehouse
Right,
of stuff.
right.
So it's like the design and then the technical application of what you do to make it look seamless.
I do like, I don't know if it was happening in Rampage, but it feels like every other Dwayne Johnson movie where he'll be on the run, hiding out, and then goes into a department store and he's got to change, right? He's got to
Yeah,
change
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
slips on another t-shirt and it's just the right
Well,
size.
the big joke I always have is that, directors want the consistency of somebody in the same look. The audience doesn't lose them. They're not losing momentum. Does changing clothes seem frivolous? That sort of thing. But producers get bored. They're like, oh God, we've been looking at them forever in this. We're going to want some posters with some other stuff. Like, can't you just change them at some point? Or, so it's, that's one of my sort of tasks is like, okay, what do you need and what do you need? All right. And then where does the actor, depending on who the actor is, some actors will just be like, okay, fine, I'll change here. And some are like, no, I need a motivation and I need to know why. And I need to know, and it's got to be buried in here. And like, do I pick out something else and go, nah, do I, like, so you have to be the counselor to everyone. Basically.
And you mentioned that about 50 odd t-shirts kind of come in and go out through the door. Do you ever think about like the sustainability of a film set? The amount of clothes that has to kind of happen to make a particular scene work?
Yes, but the one thing I will say is that, so in Los Angeles, at least, and other cities too, we have warehouses that look like football fields full of clothes. So if you wanted the clothes from Waterworld, they're at Western Costume.
Oh, I do want the
If
clothes
you
from
want, like, so all of these, like, if you ever go to Warner Brothers, there's a tour of the costume department. It is amazing. They have costumes going back to the 20s that you can still rent. I mean, you can go in and see, they archive all these things. Like there'll be times I'm going through, there was one time I was at Western Costume, I was looking at some, I think it was 20 stuff. And I could see Susan Sarandon's name sewn into the back of a costume from Pretty Baby.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's rentable. So, we do take these things and we use these things. And sometimes we introduce the public to brands that they may not know, which I think is good because, it creates, like I order brands from all over the world. And then hopefully that creates a recognition for audiences in the US, or quite frankly, because of Netflix and that anywhere. And also I think that we we don't throw anything away. It's all used.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, if we don't use it, we return it.
And a lot of stuff gets auctioned off as well. I mean, there are,
yeah, some auction off. Jennifer Lopez keeps all of her clothes. It's in her contract. And she has this gorgeous, at least at the house that I was at, she had this gorgeous closet with like the shoe racks and the dresses all lined up.
Nice.
And pretty amazing.
And this is for Parker. So, I want to get onto Parker. I want to know everything about Parker. So, okay, Jason Statham rocks up to a fitting. Tell me what he's like, and also please tell me about that. I think it's a light blue suit. That is.
I think it's Burberry.
Is it? Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's Burberry because I think we had like 6 of them.
Right.
The nice challenge of Parker was usually he was always in the same thing. He is a consistent thing that he feels good about, that he's in, and then he doesn't have to think about what he's wearing. He can think about acting. And the nice thing about this piece was he's a chameleon in this. He has to assume these different identities. And so it was a nice chance to go shopping and get him in some new brands and just do a bit of a 60s throwback to the original series. And I think he was game. I mean, after a certain amount of time, though, he's very muscular. And so he will start out, I meet him in early prep, right? And I take measurements and all that. And then by the time I go back to do a costume fitting a couple weeks later, the guns are out. And I'm like, oh,
ripping through it.
So that we have to order all bigger sizes and retailer in. And that's the thing is that most costumes that you see on lead actors in films have been tailored.
Right.
They're not off the rack. I mean, they're
Okay.
sort of off the rack, but they're, you know, pinched in and this and that. And I mean, I do think he was very happy with all of his looks for the whole film.
And do you have them tailored at Warner Brothers or the particular studio that you have, or do you have tailors that you get?
It depends. So sometimes you use they have very good tailoring shops at all the studios. Sometimes they are far too busy.
Right.
You know, it just depends on how much is coming through. Also on films, I have my own independent tailor. Sometimes two. Space Jam, I had to create an entire adjunct shop that had 2 drapers, 2 first hands, and then a bunch of stitchers. And then I had 2 costumers, one costumer that was in charge of the look of the background, and the other one that was pretty much just fabric.
Right.
Like
Okay.
all she did was source fabric, dye fabric, get fabric made to recreate all the characters at the Space Jam game.
Interesting. I listened to another interview that you did about Space Jam, and you mentioned about the copywriting hurdles and the red tape that you go through with that. And I've touched upon it before on the podcast, where I think costume designers have spoken about certain graphic tees that would have to go through various estates to get it cleared. Like famously, if you want a picture of Yoda on a teenager in a school, then that's got to go through Lucasfilms, etc.
Yeah.
Do you kind of try and steer clear of that where you can because of the headaches that are involved with that?
I mean, putting a graphic on something is a specific choice. I know when I did Wild with Reese Witherspoon, she prefers, like, if she has a serious scene, she prefers not to have something here.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't like you also know as a costume designer what your scene picture is, right? Is it this? Is it cowboy? So, you know, everything, the further away from the face you get, the less important it should be, unless it's like a shoe shot. So I feel like there's a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard it, like Al Pacino has 3 pants. These are the 3 pants he'll wear. And you can do anything on top, but this is just what
in real life or just in films?
In films.
Okay.
I mean, possibly in real life too, you know. But like don't make a meal out of that, you know. Although, and in TV it's doubly true because you never see. I did so many period shoes for the TV show I did for the first season, and the second season I'm like, whatever feels comfortable. So you never see it.
Right.
But so the big thing there's always been a thing with artwork. You know, people can get sued for using artwork. But when Warner Brothers got sued for the tattoo in The Hangover on Mike Tyson from his makeup artist, it scared the legal world because it was like millions of dollars.
I don't know about this one.
Lawsuit. Yeah, so the tattoo on Mike Tyson's face for The Hangover. Yeah. They didn't clear the tattoo. They didn't pay the tattoo artist for doing the tattoo. I think they just assumed that, you know, it was his design, but it wasn't his design. It was an artist in Vegas, and he sued them.
Wow.
And so now, anytime an actor comes in, I have to do photos of any tattoos they have on their body, and they have to sign a legal agreement, and we have to find out who did the tattoo, either pay them or get permission. And if we can't find it, it has to be covered up, which then changes the costume, because if somebody's got tats all up and down their arms, they can never wear short sleeve. The studio is like, no, not going to pay for that.
How many?
So it also goes into artwork too, right? So it's the same idea. If you are an artist and this is your original design, then you need to be paid for it.
Yeah.
Or waive it.
I'm trying to think of actors, A-listers that are all sleeved and tattooed up. It's Colin Firth one. I want to say Colin Firth. He seems like a guy that's got a lot of tattoos.
Or like Vin Diesel. Angelina Jolie has a lot.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the choice they make when they go to do it. It can be covered up, but it's a lot more hours in the chair.
What about the people that have the really discreet tattoos? Do they have to declare those? If
it's not seen, right? You know, I mean, there's a lot of people though that have like the tattoo here, or like there's a lot of guys I know, they have just under the collar.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have their tattoos, but which is, it's only a problem if it's a problem, right? But that is one of my jobs at the first fitting is like, okay, show me all your tats. Let's get I'm gonna have an assistant come in. She's gonna document it. Do you know the artist? Blah, blah, blah. It's just one
Wow.
more step. So it's like, it's almost like graphics has taken a step back
Right.
because the tattooing is like in vogue.
I never knew that. That's
now.
crazy. But I mean, it makes sense because tattoos are just so prolific. Well, they're just everywhere now. Everybody seems to
they are.
have one. I mean,
Yeah.
it used to be in the day you would get a.
I know, just the sailor.
Yeah. Well, Sean Connery had mum and dad, I think, on either sleeve, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, you used to get a tattoo back in the day to stick it to the man. But I don't think with everyone that's got a tattoo now, who you really sticking?
Now you just go to the mall. I
Right.
don't know. I personally have no tattoos, not because I wouldn't do it. I just could never make a decision for life.
Yeah, it's a commitment.
Yeah, maybe when I'm older.
Melissa, I just wanted to touch upon a couple of other films on your resume. I haven't seen Kill the Irishman, admittedly, which is a crime because of the cast that's involved in this film. You got Paul Sorvino, who is Paulie in Goodfellas, Christopher Walken, Robert Davi, all the Bond fans that be listening to this will know those guys. Val Kilmer. Can you tell me what it was like working with such a cast like that?
It was amazing, except that it was only a $5 million film, right? So, and it was in Detroit. It was great in a lot of ways because it felt like boot camp to me. I was able to, luckily I had enough friends. I had done enough big films that I was able to go to Western Costume and beg them to like give me a super, super, super discount. So I pulled most of the film out of the stock there and shipped it in, I think, like 10 e-crates.
Sorry. Roger. Oh, sorry, Melissa. He's got started. Roger, knock it off. No one there. No, shh. No. Sorry. Let me
That's okay.
Roger. Yes, no one there.
But it was a great cast and crew. I felt like I was able to really make some really great characters. It was a great script. Like when I watch it now, I'm still 100% happy with all of my work on it. Linda Cardellini, amazing, like really great people. But what I realized about the script is it does that Goodfellas thing where it moves in and out of things, but there's no real like big scenes of actors like getting their like really, really like dense scenes. There's a few. Walken has some good ones. But it actually, I feel like, taught me more about filmmaking than I occasionally get to do because it was so crazy and frenetic. And I remember the director, Jonathan Hensley, I was like, okay, I need you to pick these background actors who you want next to your leads because I gotta get period clothes for them. Like he's got to have he's got 2 little kids and then I've got to age them. So I need to know like the layers of who these kids are going to grow up to be and just like the background players and all that. And he goes, you know what? You seem to know what I should do. And I was like, well, I don't want to tell you what you should do, but I can make suggestions. He goes, I think you should do it.
Yeah.
I was like, really? And he goes, I'm never going to be able to keep up to you. It is so many people. So I'm going to call it extras casting and they're going to work with you and they're going to show up and it's going to be great, Melissa.
Oh, great.
And I was like, okay, great. If you want to trust me,
nice.
Sure. But it was, and that's the thing is I have had the opportunity of having a relationship with the directors. Like Taylor Hackford, we're doing Parker, and he's like, listen, this assassin guy, I got to use a stunt guy. I can't use an actor. And like, So these are my 3 options. And he shows me 3 headshots. What can you do with these guys? What do I do? And I go, okay, well, this one's like a Goomba. This is like your usual like mob kind of guy, right? He's like, he knows a guy. He's going to probably stab you in the back, you know, that kind of thing. So this guy looks like he goes to the gym every day. He's kind of a meathead, but he's all muscle, right? Like he's unstoppable. He's going to keep throwing those punches. I said, this guy over here, he looks like a gentleman assassin, right? He's not going to get his hands dirty. He's going to come in a perfect suit. He's going to, you know, keep it tidy. And he goes, all right, I want that guy. That works for the movie.
Is that the one that had the fight in the hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good fight as well.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's how a director and a costume designer can collaborate. Like I can look at somebody and say, I can make this person into this.
Yeah.
Right? There are some things I can't ever do. Like I am never going to make the guy who looks like, you know, Vinny from down the block is never going to be the gentleman assassin.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just doesn't, like Brian Cox was in Super Troopers, and he's just not the kind of guy that's like formal and tight fitting. Like he's kind of loose and he moves around. And so you're not going to make that animal. Yeah. You're not going to make that actor into something they don't have within them. And so what you have to do is work with, you know, okay, what can I do that's believable? How can he inhabit these clothes?
Yeah. That's, I've just remembered that the fight scene in Parker. It's so good because he throws him off the ledge of the hotel and then hangs on it. And Jason Statham really does it.
Also, so you know, Jason had those boots, those what are they? They're black and white snake boots, I think.
That's right.
So he couldn't do the whole fight in those boots. He was going to die, right? So we had his trainers, his sneakers, and we made a boot exterior to go over them so that he, you know, so if you caught it
so
cool. In a shot, it was okay. But I think I took like, I don't know, some fabric from some handbags and we stitched it together and made like the fake heel and we're like gluing it on there because you have to come up with solutions, right? Like I need to feel like I'm not going to fall on my ass. Yeah. I need to have this sort of structure. And it's like, okay, well, how do we do this, guys? Let's give everybody what they need.
I like to think he took those home as well, and he's got the sneakers and the carcass show over the top, just like Jennifer Lopez.
They probably look pretty busted after that, but yeah, I mean, and I still I see him in movies. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm still proud of what I did with him and Parker. I think he looks great.
Well, Parker's actually a really interesting intellectual property. I think it was like they made like 20 odd books. Is it the author Westlake?
Donald
Westlake. Yeah. And so they had Lee Marvin do Point Blank, I think, and then you had Mel Gibson.
And Mel Gibson did Ransom.
Payback.
Oh, Payback, that's right.
But they weren't allowed to use the name Parker unless they made all of them. So I think that was what Westlake said. He goes, "You've got to make all of them, and then I'll give you the name Parker." But he then,
and I think he had died and given the estate had given permission to do this, and they were fully hoping to do a whole series, and it just didn't. It didn't take off like they wanted.
That's a shame.
So, who knows?
Well, it was a great film. They should have ran with it. I mean, I kind of watch it and think, well, this is almost like Reacher-esque. There's the opportunity. You got the writing there. You got the books, the backstories.
Great actors. So I mean the bad guys, those guys were awesome too. Wendell, who's in Jack Ryan now and who was in The Wire, and Clifton, who's in Westworld, and I mean some real talent there.
You've seen, I can't quite finger where I've seen them before, but you look at these actors and go, I know this guy from somewhere, because they're just classic bad guys actors. Well, Melissa, thanks so much for talking through your CV. I really enjoyed it. I got some follow-up questions. I'll probably email them over to you about Joe Pesci's alligator skin jacket. Got to know about that. But
made it. Of course we made it.
Did you make it? Oh wow.
Oh, yeah. Joe Pesci is pretty much like my size with like the sleeves about an inch longer.
Ah,
So I used to try. Oh yeah, this is good. Joe will like this.
people really like that film if they haven't seen Love Ranch. I mean,
I know. You know what? It's so sad because not the pandemic. Which one were we at then? The recession hit, and Capitol Films went under, and Taylor barely was able to release it. And some people were like, you shouldn't release it because he had no money for the music, which would have been that extra. Just we had no money for reshoots, we had no money for music, and he could have easily left it on the, just walked away from it. But he felt like people had worked so hard on it. There were so many young actresses that just like, wanted to, wanted to be able to be showcased. And for me too, like it really was a huge thing for me to have that movie open. And it's just a shame, but casualties.
Well, there was a lot of money on screen, I think is the saying in the industry, because it looked great. And Joe Pesci is phenomenal in it, as well as Helen Mirren and everyone.
Yeah, and Helen.
And you say they didn't have the music where you got Joe Pesci singing at the beginning of the film. So, I mean, a lot of people don't know Joe Pesci's a singer.
Oh, yeah.
Released albums.
That's started, yeah.
So you can watch that for real. You can watch Joe Pesci serenade Helen Mirren in the first 5 minutes and you're hooked.
And I adore Joe. I mean, back in the day, I mean, this was quite a while ago when we shot this. And he used to tease me. He goes, you look like Renee Zellweger. Did you know that? And I was like, yeah, people have kind of said that. He goes, don't fuck up your face. I was like, no, I don't have that kind of money anyway, so no, I'm fine. But it was always funny. He'd always come over and be like,
oh, that's sweet.
Keep smiling.
He's a force of nature, is Joe Pesci. I mean, it's
a force of nature.
Strange. I think he did like Lethal Weapon 4 and then took a break for, I don't know what, 10 years, and then did this.
No interest in acting.
Right.
He has no interest in acting. He golfs every day.
I've seen the pictures with Sly Stallone and him. Yeah, I'm like, guys, can you just put this?
Yeah, he has a putting range at his house. His only interest in golf.
That's such a crime for people that want to watch him act. I mean, yeah, maybe if there's a golfing film, someone could.
Yeah, he would make Caddyshack 4.
That's right. Tin Cup 2. Yeah, that's.
Return of the Pesci. Yeah.
Right, Scorsese. You've got to get Joe involved with a golfing film. Melissa, it's been real fun talking to you. All the best. And Melissa Bruning, for people that do want to reach out. And you're on Instagram as well. Do you enjoy hanging out on Instagram? And we'll leave all the links over on the show notes from taylorswithlove.co.uk. But in the meantime, take care of yourself. And
thank you so much.